McPherson, you might call it the OGGC federal seat because way back in 1949, it was created and it covered the whole of the Gold Coast as we know it and went all the way out to beyond Warwick and Stanthorpe to the west. So over the years, the geographical reach of McPherson has gotten smaller and smaller as the Gold Coast population has gotten bigger and bigger. And these days it covers from Clear Island Waters and Merrimack to the north, a touch of Mudgeeraba to the west, through Robina and Varsity to the beaches of Burleigh in the east, and then takes in everything else all the way south to the border. What's never changed in all those years is that it's been a Conservative seat. Always. First, the Country Party had it through the 50s and 60s, and since 1972, it's been a Liberal seat, and a safe one at that. But with former high-profile Morrison frontbencher Karen Andrews leaving politics and a trend in recent years away from major parties, the seat of McPherson could be in play this election. So ABC Gold Coast wants to hear from the key candidates. We've invited the three parties who won the most votes last election, the LNP, Labor and the Greens, as well as a Climate 200 funded independent, a first for this seat. Erchana Murray-Bartlett is that independent and she joins me in the studio. Hello to you.
Hello, good afternoon.
What's the setup with Climate 200 funding? How much are they bankrolling your campaign? Yeah. And how beholden to them are you?
Yeah, great question. And I'm very open and transparent about the fact that we do receive Climate 200 funding. So I guess Climate 200 is a fundraising body Australia-wide, and it receives donations from tens of thousands of Australians who are concerned about climate integrity and equality. So essentially what they do is they fund community independents who align with those three values. Now, they don't build campaigns from the ground up. They look for, I guess, community groups that have already got a candidate that is aligned and then help them give them the support they need to run. As you know, federal elections are very expensive. Now, they're not our primary donor. We have been fundraising from the community for about 6 months. 7 days ago, I literally ran the entire perimeter of our electorate to raise money for our campaign, and that was matched by Climate 200. So that's an example of how we use community funding to match with Climate 200.
And can you tell me, so are you saying they're not your biggest funder of your campaign? They're not the biggest?
Primary they would be, but in terms of we've received donations from hundreds of community members as well.
Okay, so How much money are they putting into your campaign, can you say?
I wouldn't know. I'm not looking at the books every day.
Could you give me a ballpark figure?
50%. I wouldn't 50%? Know a ballpark figure. Yeah, I'm out here on the road, so it's hard to know exactly.
But you don't know how much is being spent on your campaign? Like how many thousands? Is it tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands? What do you pay?
Overall, it would be a fair bit. Yeah, I wouldn't know exactly. I'd say, it'd be a lot. It wouldn't be anything compared to, say, what the LNP are funding. A stat I can give you is in the 2022 election, the Climate 200 body donated $25 million across Australia to independent candidates. Now, that might sound like a lot of money, but when you look at what the LNP spent and Labor spent, it was $200 million apiece, so $400 million. So 25 compared to 400, it's still a David and Goliath battle.
Yeah, so it is, of course it is when you're up against major parties, but do you know how much they are tipping in for your campaign and what you're then beholden to them to do with that?
Yeah, I don't know the exact amount I said, but again, in terms of beholden to anything, no. I've got no party line that I need to toe, so long as they align to the values of integrity, equality and climate, which I absolutely do. They're three key issues for me. I can vote in any which case I want, and that is exactly what I'm going to do. I'll be voting for the McPherson and what the people of McPherson want.
The Teals, as they became known, particularly at the last election, they rose to power individually but have become a bit of a collective in Canberra. I notice you haven't taken the teal colour scheme, by the way. Was that deliberate to go with yellow and orange and not be a quote-unquote teal?
Well, we chose yellow because we are the Gold Coast. And so because I am truly an independent and I don't have to vote in line with the other independents, that I wanted to represent a colour that was the Gold Coast and yellow jumped out.
And so do you share anything in common, do you think, with those sorts of independents, though?
Yeah, I draw a lot of inspiration from the other independents. And I know that there's, in Parliament, they're called the prefects because they walk in and they work hard and they get stuff done. And there's a lot that I pull from inspiration, particularly around their climate, their renewable energy targets. Yeah.
Can we talk about energy then? Because it's a key issue in this election. Labor's extended the rebate on home energy bills until the end of the year. The coalition matched it. On climate, they're both committed to net zero emissions by 2050. It's just about how do you get there, nuclear versus renewables. Given what you've just said, I'm assuming you're in favour of renewables. But what's your plan? Like, what's your policy to have an impact on energy policy if you became the member for McPherson?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the policy that I've put forward is a 75% reduction in emissions by the year 2035. I think we need a better targeted approach to get to net zero by 2050. We need accountability there. I am a big fan of the subsidising batteries in homes. I like the energy independence that gives not only homes but small businesses as well. I mean, particularly off the back of Cyclone Alfred, a lot of businesses had to close their doors for 10 days, and that's just sometimes not viable. So having that solar and battery transition, I think, is really important.
So would you see yourself working better with a Labor government than a coalition government, given those priorities of yours?
In just that one specific issue, I do like the Labor battery rollout. I think that's a really good path forward. But no, I will work with, depending on the policy, I will work with both sides of government.
The other big issue, and there are many, but the two really big issues thus far in this campaign have been energy and housing. Massive issue. The major parties have put forward their policies, as you would know. They've been criticised, both of them have been criticised for not doing enough for supply and potentially even driving up demand and in turn prices. So what do you think is the solution to the current housing crisis?
Yeah, I agree. And I read those policies that were put forward 2 days ago, and I agree, from the experts that I've been speaking to, they're quite inflationary. I think we definitely need to be looking at supply. I think we need more affordable homes here on the Gold Coast, and we have no social housing. So we need to be looking at, I'm going to be fighting for making sure the Gold Coast has our fair share of affordable and social housing, and also renters. I'm a renter on the Gold Coast. I don't own a home. And so making sure that renters are just as looked after on the Gold Coast is so important. It's 30% of the constituents of McPherson, and making sure there's better rental standards, protections against unfair evictions, and just more targeted Commonwealth rental assistance is so important.
And what are you hearing from people on the streets of McPherson around housing? Are the majority of people talking to you about the cost of homes or about the cost of rent?
Both. I mean, the Priced Out report just came out and said you need to earn $130,000 to rent comfortably here. That's such a large amount of money for businesses to be forking out for their staff. So it's affecting businesses because staff are moving away. But, homeowners are also feeling affected because their children can't afford to live here. So families are being torn apart. It's hard for everyone. So I'm hearing it across all spectrums. Those that are comfortably owning a home and have lived here for a long time, those looking to buy or enter the market, which is the category I put myself in, and then the new entrants as well, the new renters.
Erchana Murray-Bartlett is my guest. She is an independent candidate running in the seat of McPherson, funded by Climate 200. And as I've said, we've invited candidates from the LNP, Labor and the Greens who will be joining you in coming days and across the next week. Can we talk about a local issue, which of course is light rail? Where do you stand on light rail between Burleigh to the airport?
I think we definitely need transport infrastructure. We are 7.5 years away from the Olympics. It's critical. I'm committed to waiting to see what the LNP or the state government's Have Your Say report comes back with. I want to make sure that it's been consulted properly with the community, which, in their defence, it looks like it is. I'm not opposed to metro-style buses, the light rail at the current route or the light rail down alternative route. I just need to fight to ensure the funding that's pegged for that project stays on the coast and that we get the transport infrastructure that we need.
So you haven't got a point of view at all on whether it should be light rail or buses?
Well, the role of a community independent is to listen to the community and then make the decision based off that. So for me to not wait until the community consultation is finished actually defeats the purpose of being a community independent.
What about what the rest of the Gold Coast is saying? The Gold Coast City Council put out some research that they'd done, and it said that nearly 3/4 of the Gold Coast wants to see light rail to the airport.
Yeah, and if that's the case, I'll support light rail to the airport. Yeah, absolutely.
And what about heavy rail?
I'm a big fan of heavy rail. I actually don't know why it was never done. It actually blows my mind. I think it's a fantastic... I mean, we're the 6th biggest city in Australia and the fastest growing economy yet. And it's one of the reasons I'm standing, because we are being overlooked, despite our economic contributions. The Gold Coast is being taken for granted because we've been in such a safe LNP seat for so many years. We need these projects funded. And when a party assumes it has your vote, which it has for 80 years, you said it yourself, the needs of the community fall by the wayside.
I mentioned that this is a first, really, that there isn't an incumbent, or it's unusual anyway, not a first, but unusual that there's no incumbent as such. Why do you think McPherson's ripe for the taking?
Well, that exact reason. And there's a huge appetite for change. I mean, I didn't build this community. This groundswell of independent support came well before I put my hand up to run. They've been having these conversations quietly all around McPherson for years now. So I think that we are being absolutely taken for granted. And the beautiful thing about independent is that I am never in opposition. You know, the LNP candidate will come in here and speak about all these financial commitments he's going to make to incredible projects around the coast, but at the end of the day, the polling is suggesting a Labor majority, which means all of those promises are useless.
But you're never in power.
But I am always on the crossbench, and I will negotiate with both sides of the government to advocate for our community, and that will be my primary goal.
But that will only really be strong if it's a hung parliament.
And it's polling suggesting there will be a hung parliament.
Are you hoping for a hung parliament so that you can have a say?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really good thing for Australia, for the Gold Coast. If I have a seat at the decision-making table, that's when the Gold Coast gets its fair share of funding that we've been absolutely missing out on for a long time.
Well, a lot of pieces of a puzzle have to fit into place for that to work. But interesting to see what you have planned and hopes for with McPherson. Erchana Murray-Bartlett is the independent candidate, or one of the independents, but funded by Climate 200. Thanks very much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.